October 29, 2025. The Smart Araneta Coliseum wasn't just hosting another fight, it was carrying history on its back. 50 years after Ali and Frazier tried to tear each other's souls apart in Manila, heavyweight boxing returned to the same ground looking for an echo. The crowd didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness a story that refused to follow its paperwork. In one corner stood Georgiy Yunovidov, the Russian heavyweight who wasn't officially a world champion but carried a title that sounded close enough to matter. Records leaned in his favor. Promotions leaned in his favor. The future leaned in his favor. Across the ring stood Thompson from South Africa, a man the stats tried to shrink into a footnote. 6 losses, journeyman label, road warrior mileage. The kind of fighter who usually exists to build someone else's resume. On paper, this was a step, not a destination. But boxing happens between breaths, not spreadsheets. As the introductions rolled, the contrast sharpened. Yunovidov entered with controlled composure, shoulders loose, eyes forward, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who believed time would eventually bend his way. Thompson came indifferent. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary flair. His face already looked like a man who understood what was coming, and welcomed it anyway. This was his 5th country fighting away from home. Russia hadn't broken him. Pakistan hadn't finished him. Birmingham hadn't discouraged him. Manila was just another place to plant his feet and trade. When the bell rang, there was no feeling out process, no polite jab exchange. Heavyweights don't ask permission, they announce themselves. Round 1 spoke loudly, but it lied. Thompson came out throwing heavy leather, every punch loaded, every breath audible. Yunovidov stayed disciplined, high guard tight, absorbing more than he returned. The commentary hinted at inevitability. Thompson couldn't keep this pace, they said. He was already breathing through an open mouth. Yunovidov was calm, patient, waiting. And that's how heavyweight traps are usually set. Let the other man burn, then collect what's left. The round ended with Thompson still pushing, still punching, still daring the ring to tell him no. Yunovidov walked back to his corner, looking like the night was unfolding exactly as planned. But something didn't fit. Thompson hadn't slowed. He hadn't hesitated. The body shots weren't reckless, they were intentional. The posture wasn't desperation, it was commitment. Round 2 made that clearer. Thompson crowded the space, worked the inside, leaned his weight, forced exchanges where conditioning mattered as much as skill. Yunovidov answered with clean uppercuts, sharp counters, flashes of the talent that made him the favorite. Yet every time the Russian expected the South African to step back, Thompson stepped closer. This wasn't aggression fueled by adrenaline. This was pressure with purpose. By the 3rd round, the fight had started asking different questions. Yunovidov, the man supposed to take over late, was now being forced to work early. Thompson, the man expected to fade, was still grinding. Elbows flared, bodies collided. Lever thudded against ribs, instead of echoing off gloves. The crowd leaned in because they could feel the shift, not in scoring yet, but in tone. This was becoming uncomfortable. And when heavyweight boxing gets uncomfortable, belief becomes heavier than punches. As the bell closed the early rounds, one truth settled quietly into the air. This wasn't going to be easy. The favorite was still ahead on expectation, maybe even on points. But expectation had taken a hit. And in a sport where momentum is oxygen, that mattered more than anyone realized yet. The trap had been set, but nobody was sure who was supposed to fall into it. By the 4th round, the fight stopped pretending to be tactical, and started revealing its real identity. This wasn't about angles anymore. This was about territory. Thompson wasn't backing Yunovidov up with speed or finesse. He was walking him back with presence. Every step forward wasn't rushed, it was claimed. Yunovidov tried to reset, tried to reclaim space, but Thompson's feet kept landing where they weren't supposed to. Heavyweight pressure has a sound, and it's not just punches. It's breathing, grunting, forearms, shoulders grinding ribs. The kind of sound that reminds you, this division doesn't forgive comfort. Yunovidov answered in flashes. A sharp 1-2 upstairs, a right uppercut that snapped Thompson's head back just enough to remind everyone why the Russian was favored. Technically, he was still cleaner, economical, measured. But Thompson refused to admire his work. Every clean shot came with a price. A hook to the body, a shove on the inside, a short punch during separation. These weren't highlight punches, they were investment punches, and Thompson was investing heavily. Commentary began to adjust. This wasn't a man fading. This was a man settling in. Thompson's breathing was heavy, yes, but it stayed consistent. His posture never collapsed, his eyes never dulled. Yunovidov, meanwhile, was being forced to make choices earlier than expected. Do you stand your ground and trade? Do you move and give up space? Neither option felt clean. Each round added layers of fatigue that don't show on scorecards but live deep in the legs. By round 5, the underdog narrative stopped being cute and started becoming inconvenient. Thompson wasn't just competitive, he was dictating stretches of the fight. He bullied on the inside, rolled under counters, finished combinations with brutal shots to the body. Yunovidov still landed, still responded, but he was no longer waiting. He was reacting. And reacting is expensive. Blood appeared, sweat sprayed, the crowd felt it. This wasn't a technical masterclass, this was a heavyweight tax audit, and both men were paying. Thompson's face showed damage, but his output didn't dip. Yunovidov's guard stayed high, but his elbows dropped just enough to invite punishment. The Russian expected the bodywork to slow Thompson. It hadn't. Now Thompson was testing whether it could slow Yunovidov instead. What made the moment dangerous wasn't any single punch. It was accumulation. Thompson's punches weren't always pretty, but they were always there. Yunovidov couldn't breathe without answering a question. Could he push harder? Could he match volume? Could he physically impose himself the way Thompson was? The fight was slipping out of its predicted lanes, drifting into something raw. When the 5th round ended, there was no clear winner on the scorecards for casual eyes. But the tone was undeniable. Thompson was no longer surviving someone else's fight. He was forcing his own. The favorite looked puzzled, not hurt, not broken, but uncertain. And uncertainty is a crack heavyweights don't like to see in themselves. This was no longer about whether Thompson could keep it up. It was about whether Yunovidov could take it away. And the answer wasn't coming easily. Round 6 arrived quietly, but it carried weight. This was the round where experience usually reasserts order, where the better-schooled fighter takes control, tightens screws, and separates class from courage. Yunovidov needed that separation. He needed to remind Thompson, who was supposed to dictate tempo. Instead, he found himself staring across the ring at a man who looked exactly the same as he did 6 rounds earlier. Bruised, breathing hard, but unmovable. The exchanges grew shorter, heavier. Thompson kept leaning, kept working the body, kept throwing punches that didn't seek applause, but demanded respect. Yunovidov responded with clearer shots, a jab here, an uppercut there, but the rhythm was broken. Every attempt to reset got swallowed by pressure. Thompson didn't chase knockouts, he chased ownership of space. That's harder to escape. Midway through the round, Yunovidov went down to a knee after a tangle inside. The referee waved it off as a push, no knockdown, but moments like that stick, not on scorecards, in minds. Thompson shrugged him off moments later and went right back to work. No celebration, no acknowledgement, just business. The message was clear. Nothing you do scares me. Yunovidov wasn't being dominated, but he was being tested in unfamiliar ways. The Russian system molds boxers for control, for clean scoring, for structured exchanges. Thompson brought something else. Disruption, bullying, noise, weight, the kind of chaos that doesn't show up on mitts in a gym. By round 7, urgency crept in. Yunovidov needed something decisive. He threw more, tried to increase volume, but every increase came with cost. Thompson matched him punch for punch, breath for breath. The crowd felt it now. This wasn't an upset brewing, it was one asserting itself. Thompson's nickname, the Wolf, suddenly made sense. Not because of ferocity alone, but because of stamina. Wolves don't rush kills, they outlast. Yunovidov landed a big right. Thompson took it. Thompson landed back. Yunovidov covered. This pattern repeated like a loop that wouldn't end. The Russian was durable. Impressively so. But durability without dominance is a dangerous place to live. late in a fight. The plan to let the underdog unravel had failed. Now the favorite had to take something. And Thompson wasn't offering it. As the 7th round closed, the scoreboard pressure mounted. Yunovidov likely needed a stoppage. Thompson knew it too. And knowing you're ahead changes posture. Thompson didn't chase. He imposed. He stayed first, stayed loud, stayed physical. Every punch Yunovidov threw was answered, sometimes immediately, sometimes with interest. This wasn't technical failure. It was philosophical. Yunovidov believed the fight would tilt because that's how these things usually go. Thompson believed nothing tilts unless you push it, and belief, once proven wrong, becomes heavy. The bell rang for the final round. 8 minutes ago, this wasn't supposed to matter. Now, everything did. The 8th round began with no mystery left. Yunovidov needed something dramatic. Thompson needed discipline. Both men knew it. Yunovidov tried to press forward, but Thompson met him immediately. Body shots first, then upstairs, then back to the body again. No wasted movement, no panic. The pace hadn't dipped. If anything, Thompson looked sharper now, as if the fight had finally settled into the shape he wanted all along. The damage was visible. Thompson's face wore the marks of a war. Yunovidov's expression told a different story, not pain but frustration. Every time he tried to assert himself, Thompson was already there, already answering, already leaning. The Russian landed clean punches, there's no denying it, but clean wasn't enough, not tonight. Clean needed consequence, and Thompson refused to let any moment go unanswered. The crowd roared with each exchange. They weren't watching a favorite defend a reputation anymore. They were watching a man defend his night. Thompson's grunts echoed. His punches carried intent. This wasn't desperation output, this was ownership. Yunovidov kept throwing, kept trying, but his moments came in flashes, not waves. Thompson's pressure came like weather. In the final minute, both men emptied what they had left. Yunovidov swung with urgency. Thompson swung with purpose. The difference was subtle but decisive. One man wanted a moment, the other wanted every second. When the final bell rang, exhaustion replaced motion. Gloves dropped, shoulders slumped. Thompson leaned into the ropes, chest heaving, eyes clear. Yunovidov walked back slowly, processing something he hadn't prepared for. There was no celebration yet. Heavyweight boxing teaches patience, even in victory. But the feeling in the building was unmistakable. This wasn't controversial. This wasn't close. This was earned. The scorecards confirmed it moments later. Unanimous decision. Chris Thompson, on the road, under the lights, against expectation. Against narrative. Against assumption. The belt went around his waist, but the real weight was what he carried with him. Validation. Not hype. Not promise. Proof. Yunovidov stood nearby, shell-shocked not by damage, but by realization. Talent alone hadn't failed him. Assumption had. Boxing doesn't punish skill. It punishes certainty. Years from now, the record will show a loss for Georgiy Yunovidov, and a win for Chris Thompson. It won't show the nights of travel. It won't show the assumptions. It won't show the way pressure rewrites plans. But this fight will live where good heavyweight fights always live. In memory. Because it reminded everyone watching why this division has always belonged to the stubborn. Chris Thompson didn't win because he was supposed to. He won because he refused to accept the moment he was given. He turned a showcase into a reckoning, a road fight into a statement, a label into a lie. Heavyweight boxing has no patience for arrogance, only appetite for endurance. And on this night in Manila, endurance won.